The world's great novels. Her short 30 years were spent in an almost cloistered simplicity in the moorlands of England. Yet her rich and somber imagination created its own world, and one of the most compelling novels in the English language. The National Broadcasting Company brings you the first in a 4-part version of Emily Brontë's Wuthering Heights, another in our series of books that live the world's great novels.
I leased Thrushcross Grange for a year because I wanted to escape from the stir of London society. But even so, I was astonished to find that there could be in England such a solitary spot as these bleak moorlands. It was partly from neighborliness, and I must admit partly from curiosity, that I determined to visit my landlord, whose abode is some 4 miles distant from the Grange where I live. At my first glimpse of Wuthering Heights, I stopped dead. My impulse was to turn my back on its somber foreboding and retreat to the cheerfulness of my own house. The gray mist that rose about it seemed like giant cobwebs caught in the turrets. But I continued my way toward the massive door with its grotesque carvings. On the crumbling cornerstone, I detected the date 1500 and the name Hareton, Earnshaw. I knocked. The sensation I had upon first seeing Wuthering Heights was repeated when I looked into the cold, dark eyes of my landlord. Mr. Heathcliff? I'm Mr. Lockwood, your new tenant, sir. I do myself the honor of calling as soon as possible upon my arrival to make your acquaintance.
You should not have come out on such a day. A snowstorm is beginning.
Well, now that I'm here, I hope I'm not inconveniencing you.
I do not allow anyone to inconvenience me. Walk in.
Thank you. Oh, fine dogs. Come here, fellow.
Let them alone. They're not kept for pets.
Oh, right.
Go in there by the fire. I'll join you presently.
Without another word, my host strode off and left me, and though I felt a little strange walking into the parlor alone, I found the thought of a fire too inviting to remain in the draughty corridor. Within the room sat a roughly dressed young man and a young woman with blonde curls whom a servant referred to as the Missus. They were as inhospitable as Heathcliff. The young woman was preparing tea. May I reach that canister for you, Mrs. Heathcliff? The mantle's rather high.
I don't want your help. I can get it for myself.
Well, I beg your pardon.
Well, you asked for tea.
I shall be glad to have a cup.
Were you asked?
No, but aren't you the proper person to ask me?
Hareton, if you laugh again, I'll throw this kettle at you.
Oh, no, you won't.
Oh, I won't?
Here he comes.
The storm has set in good and proper now. I told you were a fool to ramble around in such weather, Mr. Lockwood.
I can't understand why.
You run a risk of being lost in the marshes. People familiar with these moors often miss their way on such evenings, and I can tell you there's no chance of a change at present.
Well, perhaps I can get a guide among your servant lads, and he might stay at the Grange until morning. Could you spare me one?
I could not.
Oh, indeed? Well, then, it seems I must trust to my own sagacity. Or good luck.
How long does it take you to make tea? Why can't you be a little useful?
Is he to have any?
Get it ready, will you? And stop staring at me, or you shall leave the room.
An austere silence prevailed while we drank our tea. I thought perhaps my unannounced visit had caused the cloud, and that it was therefore my duty to dispel it. They could not every day sit so grim and taciturn. I ventured to speak. It's strange how custom can mold our tastes and ideas. Many could not imagine the existence of happiness in a life of such complete exile from the world as you spend, Mr. Heathcliff. Yet I'll venture to say that, surrounded by your family and with your amiable lady as the presiding genius over your home and heart, you're as...
My amiable lady? Where is she? My amiable lady.
Why, Mrs. Heathcliff here. Your wife, of course.
Mrs. Heathcliff is my daughter-in-law.
Ah, certainly, I see now. This young man to my right is the favored possessor of such a lovely person.
I'm married to him.
Ah? Her husband? Ah.
Unhappy is your conjecture, sir. We neither of us have the privilege of owning your lovely person. Her mate is dead. I said she was my daughter-in-law. Therefore, she must have married my son.
Oh, and this young man is...
Not my son, assuredly.
My name is Hareton Earnshaw, and I'd counsel you to respect it.
I meant no disrespect. And my condolences because of your son.
You may save them. Another cup of tea?
No, thank you. Excuse me.
I see you're observing the snowstorm yourself now, Mr. Lockwood.
Yes, it is coming down heavily now. I don't think it possible for me to get home now without a guide. The roads must be buried already.
Hareton, be sure to drive those dozen sheep into the barn porch. They'll be covered if left in the fold all night. And put a plank before them.
But see here, what am I to do?
I'm sure I don't know. I must look to the cattle. Come, Hareton.
Mrs. Heathcliff, you must excuse me for troubling you, but I presume, because I feel that with your face you can't help being good-hearted.
You presume a great deal.
Won't you point out some landmarks by which I may know my way home? I've no more idea how to get there than you would know how to get to London.
Take the road you came.
Then if you hear of me being discovered dead in a bog or a pit full of snow, your conscience won't whisper that it's partly your fault?
Why should it be? I cannot escort you. He won't let me go to the end of the garden wall.
But I only want you to tell me the way, not to show it. Or else to persuade Mr. Heathcliff to give me a guide.
He would do just the opposite of whatever I asked. Besides, who is there to guide you? The only persons here are himself, Earnshaw, Zillah the cook, old Joseph and I.
Are there no boys at the farm?
None.
Well, then it follows that I shall be compelled to stay here.
That you will have to settle with your host. I have nothing to do with it.
I hope this will be a lesson to you to make no more rash journeys on these hills. As to staying here, I don't keep accommodations for visitors. You must share a bed with Hareton or Joseph if you stay.
I can sleep in a chair in this room.
No, no. A stranger is a stranger, be he rich or poor. It will not suit me to permit anyone the range of the place while I am off guard.
Well, I assure you, sir, bad weather or no, I have no intention of staying in a place where my honesty is doubted.
You are quite free to go.
And I shall. Good evening.
I'll go with him as far as the park.
You'll go with him to the devil. Who would there be to look after the horses?
Get away from me, you monster! No!
Down now! Down there! Rod!
My arm.
Down there!
It's
Down
bitten
there,
most
boy.
to the bone.
That will teach you to make such hurried departures, Mr. Lockwood.
I could have been killed.
You look heartier than that.
What is all this commotion about, sir? Huh? Are we going to murder folk on our very doorstone?
Our guest has not been murdered, Zillah, though he's lost a bit of blood. But I'm afraid we'll be forced to give him shelter.
Don't think I relish the idea.
You'd be a fool if you did. Zillah, fetch Mr. Lockwood a glass of brandy to revive him. And then find him some place to rest for the night.
How does your arm feel now, sir?
Some better, Zillah. But I'm still quite weak.
Ah, yes. You lost a deal of blood. Sir,
Yes?
I'm going to ask as a favor that you hide your candle and not make any noise when I take you into this room.
It's all right. But may I ask why?
The master doesn't know I'm putting you here. You would be strong against it. He never lets anyone in this room willingly.
Well, what's the reason?
I'm sure I wouldn't know, sir. I've only lived here near 2 years, and they're having too many curious goings-on for me to try to understand the reasons back of them. This lock's getting a bit rusty. There now. Aye, many curious goings-on.
It was indeed a strange room. The furniture consisted of a chair, a clothes press, and a bed next to a window. A few mildewed books rested on the windowsill. Before extinguishing my candle, I noticed the bedstead had writing scratched on its pate. This writing, however, was nothing but a name, repeated in all kinds of characters, large and small. Catherine Earnshaw, here and there varied to Catherine Heathcliff, and then again to Catherine Linton. In vapid listlessness, I leant my head against the window and continued repeating the name on names till I fell asleep. Or I think I fell asleep. Oh, yes, I did dream that. It couldn't have really happened. And yet I still wonder. You see, I could hear the gusty wind outside the window and the driving snow. A fir bough kept scraping against the window. It annoyed me so much I resolved to silence it. I tried the casement, but found the hook was soldered into the staples. But I couldn't stand the noise, so I knocked my fist through the glass and stretched my arm out to grasp what I thought was the branch. But instead my fingers closed on a small, ice-cold hand. I tried to draw my arm back, but the hand clung to it, and then a melancholy voice sobbed.
Let me!
Who are you?
Catherine Linton, I've come home. I'd lost my way on the moor. Please, let me come in.
I'll never let you in, not if you begged for 20 years.
It is 20 years. 20 years that I've been roaming the moor.
Let go my hand. Leave me alone. Get away. No, you're not human. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Is anyone in here?
It is only your guests, sir.
Oh. Confound you, Mr. Lockwood. Who showed you into this room? Tell me, who was it? I've a mind to turn them out of the house.
It was your servant, Zilla. And I shouldn't care if you did turn her out. She richly deserves it. I suppose she wanted to get another proof at my expense that this room is haunted. Well, it is, I can assure her. You have reason in shutting the room up, sir.
What do you mean? Tell me.
If the little fiend had got in at the window, she probably would have strangled me.
Who? Who?
That minx Catherine Linton or Earnshaw or whoever she was called.
Kathy? What did she say?
She told me she'd been walking the earth for 20 years. Probably a just punishment for her mortal transgressions, I've no doubt.
How dare you? How dare you say such thing to me under my roof?
Why? What did I...
Mr. Lockwood, you may go into my room and finish the night. I'll join you directly. Please, go.
Gladly. I left the room, but not knowing my way about the dark corridors, I hesitated just outside the door for a moment. I saw Mr. Heathcliff go to the window, throw it wide open, and call.
Kathy, come in. Come in, Kathy. Just once more, my heart's darling. Hear me this time, Kathy, please. Kathy! Kathy!
Thrushcross Grange was a welcome sight on my return that morning. I sat before a cheerful fire with a pot of smoking coffee and thought of the evening before. When Mrs. Ellen Dean, my housekeeper, brought in my supper, I asked that she sit down while I ate it, hoping sincerely that she would prove to be somewhat of a gossip. You've lived here a considerable time, Mrs. Dean.
18 years at Thrushcross Grange, sir. I came here from Wuthering Heights when my mistress was married to wait on her.
From Wuthering Heights?
After she died, the master retained me for his housekeeper.
I see.
Times are greatly changed since then.
I suppose you've seen a good many alterations.
I have, and troubles, too.
You know, Mrs. Dean, after visiting Wuthering Heights, I find it puzzling that Mr. Heathcliff remains there rather than here at the Grange, which he also owns.
I cannot understand anything about him, sir.
It seems he would at least fix the Heights up a bit. He has enough money, I'm sure.
He has nobody knows how much money, and every year it increases. It is strange people should be so greedy when they're alone in the world.
Yes. He had a son, it seems.
Yes, he had one. He's dead.
And that young lady, Mrs. Heathcliff, is the widow?
Yes.
Where did she come from originally?
Why, sir, she is my late master's daughter. Catherine Linton was her maiden name.
What? Catherine Linton?
Yes, sir. Why do you start at the name?
No reason.
She was named after her mother, Catherine Earnshaw Linton.
Oh, I see. And her mother lived at Wuthering Heights.
That's right, sir.
Mrs. Dean, it will be a charitable deed if you tell me something of my neighbors. I'm interested in them, and I feel I shall not rest if I go to bed.
Oh, certainly, sir, if you wish it. I'll just fetch a little sewing, and then I'll sit as long as you please.
The worthy woman bustled off, and I felt an excitement almost to the pitch of foolishness through my nerves and brain. When Mrs. Dean returned and took her place by the fire, she began her story. And I shall let you hear it as it was told to me.
Before I came to live here, I was at Wuthering Heights. My mother had worked there before me for the Earnshaw family. Well, one fine summer evening, it was the beginning of harvest, I remember. The children, Hindley, who was 14, and Cathy, who was barely 6, were begging their mother to let them stay up late to await their father's return from a trip to Liverpool.
Please, Mama, let us stay up just a little while longer.
Yes, please, Mama. Papa will be home soon.
But, children, it's way past your bedtime. You will see Papa in the morning.
No, tonight. He promised to bring us presents.
A fiddle for me.
And me a riding whip.
I've never seen the likes of such children. Cathy, you should certainly be abed.
No, I want to stay up. I will stay up.
Listen.
What is it? Oh, it's Papa.
Papa.
So it is the traveler has returned.
Well, my family has stayed up to greet me, eh?
We wouldn't go to bed.
Mama wanted us to.
And I'm glad you stayed up. Good evening, Ellen.
Welcome home, Mr. Earnshaw.
You look tired, dear.
That I am, my dear.
What have you wrapped in your cloak?
Our presents, Papa?
Yes. My riding whip.
No, not the violin or the riding whip.
Oh.
But it is a present for all of us, and we must consider it a gift from God.
Whatever is it?
I shall unveil it and show you.
Oh.
Stand up, lad. That's right.
A dirty, ragged gypsy boy. And he's quite mad at that.
You've offended him, my dear.
Why did you bring him home, Papa?
Yes, would you mind telling me what you intend doing with him?
Why, making him one of the family. What else?
You think we don't have enough on our hands with 2 of our own bairns to feed and fend for? You just send him back where he came from.
That I can't do because I haven't the slightest idea where he comes from. I found him in the streets of Liverpool, starving and homeless and as good as dumb. No one knew who he was. I couldn't leave him in such a pitiable state.
See how he clings to Papa.
Filthy gypsy.
Quiet, Hindley.
Why, he's covered with dirt.
But a nice scrubbing will make him as clean as the rest of us. Take him away, Ellen Dean, and scrub him good. Then put him to bed with the children.
Yes, sir. Come along. Now come along, boy.
Go along with Ellen, boy. It's all right. That's it. Go ahead.
Papa, I shan't sleep with such a dirty ragamuffin.
You hold your tongue, Hindley. But for the grace of God, it might have been you walking the streets of Liverpool alone and hungry. From now on, you will treat him as your brother.
What's his name, Papa?
I don't know that either.
But we shall have to call him something.
I have thought of a name for him. We shall christen him Heathcliff.
Heathcliff?
Exactly.
I like the name. Heathcliff. Heathcliff.
Heathcliff was all the name he ever had. It served him for both Christian and surname. Well, before any time at all, Miss Cathy and he became devoted to each other. They spent long hours of every day romping over the moors together. But with Hindley, it was a different matter. He hated Heathcliff. And after the death of Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw, Hindley let the full force of his hatred be felt. He was newly married when his father passed on, and he set himself up as a master of the house and ordered Heathcliff to be treated as a servant, forbidding Miss Cathy to have anything to do with him, though little attention she paid to that. Why, the 2 of them promised fair to grow up as rude as savages. I remember one Sunday evening when Hindley came into the kitchen to call Cathy to supper.
Cathy, how many times must I tell you to come to table immediately when dinner is And what, may I ask, are you doing with that ruffian?
I am teaching Heathcliff what the curate taught me yesterday, since you've forbidden him any more education.
Cathy, don't... I forbade his education because it isn't necessary for snivelling servants to put on learned airs. And I don't intend that you shall go against my orders.
Heathcliff isn't a servant. If Father were alive, he wouldn't allow you...
Silence! I'm the master here, and I'll not have you forgetting. And you dirty gypsy, I'll flog you within an inch of your life for sitting in here by the fire when you should be out tending to the cattle.
Henry, put down that broom.
Don't worry, Cathy. He doesn't hurt me.
Oh, you think not? Why, you insolent cur, we'll see if I hurt you or not.
No, you shan't be.
Out of my way. Get to your room and stay there. I'll flog you as well.
I won't.
Go to your room, I say.
Please go, Cathy.
She doesn't take orders from you, but from me. Now, get out of here. Now, let's see if I hurt you or not. How does this feel, eh? How does this feel?
Cathy, I was afraid you wouldn't be able to slip out.
There's nothing that would keep me away from you, Heathcliff.
Did Hindley lock you in your room?
Yes, he did, but I climbed out the window and down the side of the wall. It's lucky the stones are so uneven. They're almost like steps. Oh, Heathcliff, he must have hurt you terribly.
No, Cathy.
Oh, but your shirt is all torn, and there are great black spots on your back and arms. Oh, my poor Heathcliff.
The bruises only hurt me, Cathy, when they give you pain. Please, don't think about them. I can stand anything but to see you unhappy. We're on our moors now. We're away from Hindley and everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heathcliff. I forgot. We promised to forget everything else when we were together. In our world. Nothing can hurt us here together.
Oh, Cathy, if I could only keep you from ever being hurt.
Now, you're the one who's being sad. Come on. I'll race you across the moors. I can beat you.
Oh, no, you can't.
Oh, well, catch me then. Catch me, Heathcliff. All right, Heathcliff. You caught me, but only because I lost my shoes in the bog.
Maybe you're right at that, Cathy. You can run like the wind. Do you want to go back to the bog and look for your shoes?
No, we'll get them later. I love to walk barefoot anyway. Oh, well, look, Heathcliff. We ran a very long way. There's Thrushcross Grange just over there.
Oh, so it is, where the Linton family lives.
They have a son and daughter just about our age. Heathcliff.
What, Cathy?
Let's walk over and peep in the windows of the Grange and see how they live. I'll bet the Lintons don't treat their children the way Hindley treats us.
I will if you want to, Cathy.
Oh, I do. Look, we can crawl right through this broken place to the hedge here. Come on. I have my hair caught on the thorn in the bush.
Oh, I'll untangle it. There.
Thank you. Now, we must be quiet, else they'll see us. What fun.
Oh, there's a flower box under this window. We can stand on it and see in quite clearly.
Oh, Heathcliff, have you ever seen such a beautiful room?
Oh, the whole room is carpeted with crimson-colored chairs and tables.
And the ceiling has a gold border. Those are the children standing by the table there.
And dressed like a prince and princess.
I'm going to hang on to this window ledge and raise myself up a bit so I can see the rest of the room.
Well, be careful. This flower box isn't too steady. Oh, Cathy, look out, the box is falling. Are you hurt, Cathy?
Of course not. Take more than a silly old flower box to hurt me. Heathcliff, we do look so funny.
Listen.
That direction.
There it is. They're coming.
Oh, we'll run for it.
There they go, running.
Two thieves.
After them, Skulker.
Run, Heathcliff, run. The bulldog's caught me. You go.
No, Kathy, I won't leave you. Oh, he's bitten your ankle. You filthy cur.
Keep fast, Skulker. Keep fast. We have them now.
Why, it's only a little girl and a lad. Though the boy does look like a little villain.
Keep away from me, you witch.
Oh.
You've hurt Kathy.
Such language.
Hold your tongue, boy.
What a frightful thing he is. Put him in the cellar, Papa. He's exactly like the son of the fortune teller who stole my tame pheasant, isn't he, Edgar?
Papa, it's Miss Earnshaw.
Miss Earnshaw? Nonsense, Edgar. Miss Earnshaw scouring the country with a gypsy?
I've seen her at church on Sundays.
I say, my dear, are you Miss Earnshaw?
Stop quizzing her. Can't you fools see she's hurt bad?
You wicked boy.
Skulker did bite her leg deeply, my dear. She may be maimed for life. Oh, this is terrible.
Oh, we must take her into the house at once and bandage the ankle.
Yes, I'll carry her.
Keep your hands off her.
Get away, boy. Be off.
I won't go without Kathy.
Ah, now I know who this fellow is. The vagabond child Mr. Earnshaw picked up on a journey to Liverpool.
I tell you, I won't go back without Kathy.
But don't you see she can't return with you now? She isn't able to walk.
Go on back without me, Heathcliff. Explain to Ellen Dean what has happened, and she will know how to tell Henry. Oh, Heathcliff, why do you look so sad?
I don't want you to go into that house, Kathy. I'm afraid you'll never be the same again.
Stop your talk and get home, boy. You go ahead, my dear, and prepare bandages.
Yes,
I'll carry Miss Earnshaw in. Do you feel comfortably enough, my dear?
Kathy. Kathy.
For all his wild ways, Heathcliff was a sensitive boy, and his fear about Miss Kathy came true, though it was certainly better for her. It took 5 weeks for her ankle to heal, which time she spent at Thrushcross Grange. And when she returned to Wuthering Heights, she was indeed a greatly changed little lady.
Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë is one of the world's great novels brought to you each week by the National Broadcasting Company. We invite you to listen next week to the second episode of Wuthering Heights and suggest that you visit your local public library very soon. To enhance your enjoyment of this series, we recommend the Handbook of the World's Great Novels, which you may obtain by sending 25 cents to World's Great Novels, Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. That's Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27. Wuthering Heights is adapted for radio by Agnes Eckhart. The music was composed by Emil Soderstrom, and the orchestra was directed by Bernard Berquist. The entire production was under the direction of Homer Heck. Bill Fine and Boris Apollon are featured as the younger and elder Heathcliff, and Martha McCain as Kathy Earnshaw. Ellen Dean is played by Geraldine Kay, and Mr. Lockwood by Jonathan Hole. Catherine Linton is played by Jean Mowry.
World's
Zilla
great
by
novel.
Hilda Graham. The National Broadcasting Company brings you the second in a 4-part version of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Another in our series of books that live, the world's great novels.
Good evening. As you may remember, my name is Lockwood. I moved from London to these bleak English moorlands to enjoy their strange solitude. My house is called Thrushcross Grange, and I leased it for a year from a cold, inscrutable man named Heathcliff, who lived some 4 miles away at Wuthering Heights. It was after a visit to that somber house and its grim inhabitants that I determined to learn the story of their lives. Luckily, for my curiosity's sake, Mrs. Ellen Dean, my housekeeper, had worked for the Earnshaw family at Wuthering Heights as long as 25 years ago, when Cathy and Hindley were but children. And Mr. Earnshaw brought home a beggar boy he found in the streets of Liverpool and named him Heathcliff. Since the story's a long one, and I insist no details be omitted, I'm only able to hear it in episodes when Mrs. Dean is able to spare me an hour from her duties. Oh, that's probably she now. Come in. Well, good evening, Mrs. Dean.
Good evening, Mr. Lockwood.
I'm glad to see you. I was afraid you might have forgotten your promise to continue your narrative this evening.
Indeed, I shouldn't forget, Mr. Lockwood, if it gives you enjoyment.
Fine. Here, take this chair.
Thank you. Well, let's see now. Where did I leave off?
You told me how Cathy and Heathcliff through the years had become close friends. That after Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw died and Hindley married, he treated Heathcliff like a servant. But Cathy and Heathcliff had their happy moments when they could escape to the moors.
Ah, yes. What wild ones they were. And I told you about the time they slipped up here to Thrushcross Grange, where the Lintons and their 2 children lived, and how the Linton dog bit Cathy's ankle, and she was forced to stay at Thrushcross Grange for 5 weeks till it mended.
Yes, quite right.
Well, when she returned to the Heights just before Christmas, she was a greatly changed little lady. And poor Heathcliff had gotten wilder looking by the day. I never shall forget the sight of her as she rode up that day on a handsome black pony, a very dignified person with brown ringlets falling from the cover of her feathered beaver. Hindley lifted her from the horse, exclaiming,
Cathy, you're quite a beauty.
Am I, Hindley?
You must have looked often enough in a mirror recently to be assured of that. Isabella Linton is not to be compared with her, is she, Ellen?
Oh, hello, Ellen.
Hello, Miss Cathy. I dare not come too close to you, for I'm all flour from the Christmas baking.
Where is Heathcliff? Well, Ellen, isn't Heathcliff about someplace?
He's sulking behind the settle over there. Heathcliff, you may come forward. You may come and wish Miss Catherine welcome like the other servants.
Why, Heathcliff, what on earth makes you hide from me? Oh, come on, give me a kiss. Oh, how very black and cross you look. Oh, that's because I'm used to Edgar and Isabella Linton. Well, Heathcliff, have you forgotten me?
Shake hands, Heathcliff.
I shall not. I shall not stand to be laughed at. I shall not bear it.
Oh, now, don't run off, Heathcliff. I didn't mean to laugh at you, but I couldn't hinder myself. Oh, Heathcliff, shake hands at least. What are you sulky for? It was only that you looked odd. If you just wash your face and brush your hair, it'll be all right again.
You needn't have touched me. I shall be as dirty as I please. I like to be dirty, and I will be dirty.
Oh, Heathcliff! Heathcliff, come back! Heathcliff!
Heathcliff was no more to be seen that day, and we were all too busy with Christmas preparations to look long for him. The next day, however, he slipped into the kitchen where I was working, and I made use of the chance to give him a real scolding.
You should be thoroughly ashamed of yourself, Heathcliff.
And what did I do?
Well, you've grieved Catherine. She's sorry she ever came home, I dare say.
Did she say she was grieved?
She cried when I told her you were off again this morning.
Well, I cried last night. I had more reason to cry than she.
Ah, yes, you had the reason of going to bed with a proud heart and an empty stomach. But if you be ashamed of yourself, you must ask her pardon. And though I have dinner to get ready, I'll steal time to arrange you so that Edgar Linton shall look quite like a doll beside you when he arrives, and that he does. You're younger, and yet you could knock him down in a twinkling.
But, Ellen, if I could knock him down 20 times, that wouldn't make him less handsome or me more so. I wish I had light hair and a fair skin and was dressed and behaved as well, and had a chance of being as rich as he will be. But I'll show them all someday, Ellen. I'll get even with Hindley for making a servant of me, and I'll show them all, I swear I will.
Isabella and Edgar Linton called at Wuthering Heights that day, and it was plain to see Cathy was fond of them. The next 3 years were very dark indeed. Mr. Hindley's wife died when their son was born, and in his grief he took heavily to drink, which made him abuse Heathcliff all the more. The baby, little Hareton, was given solely to my care, as Hindley never paid any attention to it. The curate dropped calling, and nobody decent came near us except Edgar Linton's visits to Miss Cathy. By this time, at 17, she was the queen of the countryside. Indeed lovely. But what a headstrong creature. One afternoon, she came into the kitchen while I was rocking Hareton. I thought Heathcliff had gone to the barn, but I found later he had been sitting behind the stove.
Are you alone, Ellen?
Yes, miss.
Is Heathcliff about?
No, miss. He was here a while ago, but I think he went to the barn.
Oh, dear, I'm so very unhappy.
Well, a pity. You're hard to please. So many friends and so few cares, and can't make yourself content.
Oh, Ellen, will you keep a secret for me?
Is it worth keeping?
Well, yes, and it worries me, and I must let it out. I want to know what I should do. Today, Edgar Linton asked me to marry him, and I've given him an answer. But now, before I tell you whether it was consent or denial, you tell me which it ought to have been.
Well, really, Miss Catherine, how can I know?
Well, I accepted him, Ellen. Oh, be quick. Say whether I was wrong.
You accepted him?
Yes.
Then what good is it discussing the matter? You've pledged your word and cannot retract.
But say whether I should have done so. Do.
Oh, there are many things to be considered before that question can be answered properly. First and foremost, do you love Mr. Edgar?
Who can help it? Of course I do.
Why do you love him, Miss Cathy?
Oh, nonsense, I do. That's sufficient.
By no means. You must say why.
Well, because he's handsome and pleasant to be with.
Bad.
And because he is young and cheerful.
Bad still.
And because he loves me. And he will be rich. And I shall like to be the greatest woman of the neighborhood. And I shall be proud of having such a husband.
Worst of all. Why, there are several other handsome, rich young men in the world. Handsomer and richer possibly than he is. What should hinder you from loving them?
Well, if there are any, they're out of my way. Edgar is now, and I have only to do with the present, and I wish you would speak rationally.
Well, that settles it. If you have only to do with the present, marry Mr. Linton. And now, let us hear what you are unhappy about. Your brother will be pleased. The Lintons will not object. You will escape from a disorderly, comfortless home into a wealthy, respectable one. Where is the obstacle?
In whichever place the soul lives. In my soul and in my heart, I'm convinced I'm wrong. I've no business to marry Edgar Linton, and if wicked Hindley hadn't brought Heathcliff so low, I shouldn't have thought of it. But it would degrade me now to marry Heathcliff. So, he shall never know how I love him. And I love him not because he's handsome, but because he's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. Linton's is as different as a moonbeam from lightning or frost from fire. What was that? Who was that, Ellen? Why do you look so strange?
Nothing's wrong, miss. It was only Joseph shutting the door.
You're sure it wasn't Heathcliff? I want to be sure Heathcliff doesn't know what being in love is.
I see no reason that he should not know, as well as you. And if you are his choice, he will be the most unfortunate creature that ever was born. As soon as you become Mrs. Linton, he loses friend and love and all. He'll be quite deserted.
Deserted? We separated? Not as long as I live, Ellen. Every Linton on the face of the earth might melt into nothing before I could consent to forsake Heathcliff. Well, I shouldn't be Mrs. Linton were such a price demanded. He'll be as much to me as he has been all his lifetime. I know you think me a selfish wretch, but did it never strike you, Ellen, that if Heathcliff and I were married, we should be beggars? Whereas if I marry Edgar, I can aid Heathcliff to rise and place him out of my brother's power. What was that? Joseph, who was that on the horse?
I could not stop him.
What are you talking about? What's the matter?
That Heathcliff, he jumped on a horse and dashed away. When I asked him where he was going and when he'd be back, he said he didn't know where and he wasn't coming back. He'd stolen the horse.
Heathcliff, gone. Oh, Joseph, did you close that door a few minutes ago?
No, miss, I just now come from the fields.
He heard what I said. Heathcliff was in this room. You lied to me, Ellen. I must get him. He's Kathy. Heathcliff. Oh, Heathcliff, come back. Heathcliff.
There was a violent storm that night, which settled over the heights in full fury, and Kathy didn't come home until after midnight and with a terrible case of chills and fever. She was in such a state I thought she was going mad. She lay abed for over a fortnight, raving and crying for Heathcliff. But he was never seen again after the night of the thunderstorm. And Edgar Linton danced such attendance on Kathy that 3 years later he led her to the altar, and they persuaded me to come here to Thrushcross Grange as housekeeper, since Mr. and Mrs. Linton had died in the meanwhile.
Well, Mrs. Dean, was Kathy happy in her new life with Edgar Linton?
She behaved infinitely better than I dared to expect. She seemed almost over-fond of Mr. Linton, and even to his sister Isabella she showed plenty of affection. Of course, they were both very attentive to her comfort. I observed that Mr. Edgar had a deep-rooted fear of ruffling her humour, and for the space of a year the gunpowder lay as harmless as sand because no fire came near to explode it. They seemed in possession of deep and growing happiness. But it ended. On a mellow evening in September, I was coming from the garden with a heavy basket of apples which I'd been gathering. It had got dusk, and I lingered by the door to look at the moon, when I heard a voice behind me say,
Ellen, is that you?
What? Who?
I have waited here an hour, and the whole of that time all round has been still as death. I dared not enter. You do not know me. Look, I am not a stranger.
What? You come back? Is it really you?
Yes, Heathcliff. Are they at home? Where is she? You needn't look so disturbed, Ellen. Is she here? Speak. I want to have one word with her, your mistress. Go and say some person from Gimmerton desires to see her.
Well, how will she take it? The surprise bewilders me. It will put her out of her head. You are Heathcliff, and yet so altered.
Stop chattering, Ellen, and go carry my message. I'm in torment till you do.
I went to announce his arrival with deep misgivings. I was sure no good could come of his presence.
Are you bringing tea, Ellen?
It's not quite ready, Mum.
Well, what is it, Ellen? Do you wish to speak with me?
You look troubled, Ellen.
Oh, no, sir, but a person from Gimmerton wishes to see you, Mum.
What does he want, Ellen?
Well, I did not question him.
Well, close the curtains, Nellie, and bring on tea. I'll be back again directly, Edgar.
She was gone but a few minutes, and when she returned, she was greatly changed.
Edgar, darling, Heathcliff's come back. He is.
Well, don't strangle me for that. He never struck me as such a marvelous treasure. There's no need to be frantic.
Well, I know you don't like him, yet for my sake you must be friends now. Shall I tell him to come up?
Here? Into the parlour?
Oh, where else?
Seems the kitchen would be a more suitable place for one of your old servants.
No, for I cannot sit in the kitchen. Ellen, set 2 tables here. One for your master and Miss Isabella, being gentry, and the other for Heathcliff and myself, being of the lower orders. Will that please you, dear? Or must I have the fire lighted elsewhere? If so, give direction.
Stay where you are, Catherine. Ellen, you bid him step up. And Catherine, try to be glad without being absurd. The whole household need not witness the sight of your welcoming a runaway servant as a brother.
I was amazed to behold the transformation in Heathcliff. He had grown a tall, athletic, well-formed man, beside whom Mr. Linton seemed quite slender. A half-civilized ferocity lurked yet in the depressed brows and eyes, full of black fire, but it was subdued. He took a seat opposite Catherine, and they were much too absorbed in their mutual joy to suffer embarrassment. But not so Mr. Linton. He grew pale with pure annoyance, a feeling that reached its climax when his wife seized Heathcliff's hand and said,
"Oh, I shall think it a dream tomorrow. I shall not be able to believe that I have seen and touched and spoken to you once more." And yet, cruel Heathcliff, you don't deserve this welcome. To be absent and silent for 4 years and never think of me.
A little more than you have thought of me. I heard of your marriage, Cathy, not long since. I planned to have just one glimpse of you, settle my score with Hindley, and then prevent the law by doing execution on myself.
Heathcliff.
Your welcome has put these ideas out of my mind. But beware of meeting me with another aspect next time. Nay, you'll not drive me off again. You were really sorry for me, were you? Well, there was cause. I fought through a bitter life since I last heard your voice, and you must forgive me, for I struggled only for you.
Catherine, unless we are to have cold tea, please to serve it. Mr. Heathcliff will have a long walk wherever he may lodge tonight, and I'm thirsty.
Ellen? It's I, Ellen.
Oh, yes, Mum. Is something amiss?
Oh, no. I'm sorry to disturb you, but, well, I can't rest. I want some living creature to keep me company in my happiness. Edgar is sulky because I'm glad of a thing that does not interest him.
But they have never liked each other.
Oh.
Let Mr. Linton alone about Heathcliff, unless you would like an open quarrel between them.
But does it not show great weakness on Edgar's part? I never feel hurt at the brightness of Isabella's yellow hair and the whiteness of her skin. It pleases Edgar to see us cordial, and, well, that pleases me. Oh, there's so much alike. They're spoiled children.
You're mistaken, Mrs. Linton. They humor you. I know what there would be to do if they did not. You can well afford to indulge their passing whims as long as their business is to anticipate all your desires. You may, however, fall out at last over something of equal consequence to both sides, and then those you term weak are very capable of being as obstinate as you.
Oh, no, Ellen. I tell you, I have such faith in Linton's love that I believe I might kill him, and he wouldn't wish to retaliate.
Then you should value him the more for his affection.
Well, I do, but he needn't resort to whining for trifles. He must get accustomed to Heathcliff, so he may as well like him.
Frankly, Mum, I was quite surprised to learn that Heathcliff's going to Wuthering Heights. He seems reformed in every respect.
I wondered at that as much as you until I explained it. You see, he stopped at Wuthering Heights to gather information about me. Hindley had some people sitting at cards, and Heathcliff joined them. Well, my brother lost some money to him, and finding Heathcliff plentifully supplied, asked him to stop back in the evening. Hindley is too reckless to select his acquaintances with care. He doesn't trouble himself to think how he has wronged Heathcliff. And also, Heathcliff wants to stay at the Heights so that we may see each other. Often.
Have you no fear of the consequences, Mrs. Linton?
None for my Heathcliff. His strong head will keep him from danger. A little for Hindley. But he can't be made morally worse than he is.
And for yourself?
No, I've never been so happy, Ellen.
But I had a deep fear. It was first fulfilled in a way that was a shock even to me. We all remarked during some time that Miss Isabella fretted and pined over something. She was cross and wearisome, but we excused her to a certain extent on the plea of ill health. But when Mrs. Linton threatened to send for the doctor, Miss Isabella said it was only Catherine's harshness that made her unhappy.
How can you say I am harsh, you naughty girl?
You are. You are.
Oh, you're surely losing your reason. When have I been harsh? Now, tell me.
Yesterday. And now.
Yesterday? And on what occasion?
In our walk along the moor. You told me to ramble where I pleased while you sauntered on with Mr. Heathcliff.
Oh, and that's your notion of harshness? It was no hint that your company was superfluous. We didn't care whether you kept with us or not. I merely thought our talk would have nothing entertaining for your ears.
Oh, no. You wished me away because you knew I liked to be there.
Oh, Helen, can you be sane? Now, I'll repeat our conversation word for word, Isabella, and you point out any charm it could have had for you.
I don't mind the conversation. I wanted to be with...
Well...
Yes, with him. And I won't always be sent off. You're a dog in the manger, Kathy, and desire no one to be loved but yourself.
You are an impertinent little monkey. But I'll not believe this idiocy. It's impossible that you could covet the admiration of Heathcliff, that you consider him an agreeable person. I hope I misunderstood you, Isabella.
No, you have not. I love him more than you ever loved Edgar. And he might love me if you would let him.
I wouldn't be you for a kingdom, then. Ellen, help me to convince her of her madness. Tell her what Heathcliff is. He's not a rough diamond. He's a fierce, pitiless man. I know he couldn't love a Linton, and yet he'd be quite capable of marrying your fortune and expectations. Now, there's my picture, and I'm his friend.
For shame. For shame. You're worse than 20 foes, you poisonous friend.
You won't believe me, then. You think I speak from wicked selfishness.
I'm certain you do, and I shudder at you.
Well, then try for yourself, if that be your spirit.
Oh, Ellen, all are against me. But she uttered a falsehood, didn't she? Mr. Heathcliff is not a fiend. He has an honourable soul and a true one.
Banish him from your thoughts, miss. He's no mate for you. Mrs. Linton spoke strongly, and yet I cannot contradict her. Even now, he is gambling nightly with Mr. Hindley and getting him in debt to him so he can take Wuthering Heights for his own.
Idle gossip. You're leagued with the rest, Ellen. I'll not listen to your slanders. You're only trying to convince me there is no happiness in the world.
Whether she would have got over this fancy if left to herself, I cannot say, for she had little time to reflect. The day after, there was a justice meeting at the next town. My master was obliged to attend, and Mr. Heathcliff, aware of his absence, called rather earlier than usual. Catherine and Isabella were sitting in the library on hostile but silent terms.
Come in, Heathcliff. I'm glad you're here. You see, two people sadly in need of a third to thaw the ice between them, and you are the very one we would both choose. Heathcliff, I'm proud to show you at last somebody that dotes on you more than myself.
What?
Catherine, I expect you to feel flattered. No, it's not Ellen. Don't look at her. My poor little sister-in-law is breaking her heart by mere contemplation of your physical and moral beauty.
Catherine!
No, Isabella, you shan't run off. I was informed last night, Heathcliff, that if I would but have the manners to stand aside, she would shoot a shaft into your soul that would fix you forever and send my image into eternal oblivion.
Catherine, I'd thank you to adhere to the truth and not slander me, even in joke.
No, but I'm not joking, Isabella. I shan't be called a dog in the manger again.
Oh!
What did you mean by teasing the creature in that manner, Kathy? You were not speaking the truth, were you?
I assure you I was. She's been dying for your sake for several weeks. But don't notice it further. I wish to punish your sauciness. That's all. I like her too well, my dear Heathcliff, to let you seize and devour her up.
And I like her too ill to attempt it, except in a very ghoulish fashion. Yes, you'd hear of odd things if I lived alone with that mawkish waxen face. The most ordinary would be painting on its whiteness the colors of the rainbow and turning the blue eyes black every day or two. They detestably resemble Lintons. She's her brother's heir, is she not?
Well, I should be sorry to think so. Half a dozen nephews should erase the title, please heaven. But dismiss it from your mind. You are too prone to covet your neighbor's goods. And remember, this neighbor's goods are mine.
If they were mine, Kathy, they would be none the less that. But though Isabella Linton may be silly, she is scarcely mad. So we'll dismiss the matter as you advise.
From their tongues they did dismiss it, and Catherine probably from her thoughts. Heathcliff, I felt certain, recalled it often in the course of the evening, and I was right. The next time he called, Miss Isabella happened to be in the courtyard. As soon as he saw her, he took a sweeping survey of the yard and then walked up to her. She seemed embarrassed and desirous of getting away. And then the scoundrel had the impudence to embrace her. Mrs. Linton was in the kitchen with me, and saw Isabella tear herself free and run into the garden. A minute after, Heathcliff opened the door.
Heathcliff, to you about raising this stir. I said you must let Isabella alone. Now, I beg you will, unless you're tired of being received here and wish Linton to draw the bolts against you.
Heaven forbid that he should try.
Hush. Why have you disregarded my request? Did she come across you on purpose?
What's it to you? I have a right to kiss her if she chooses, and you have no right to object.
If you like Isabella, you shall marry her. But do you like her? Tell the truth, Heathcliff. There. You won't answer. I'm certain you don't.
And would Mr. Linton approve of his sister marrying that man?
He might spare himself the trouble. I could do as well without his approbation. And as to you, Catherine, I have a mind to speak a few words now while we're at it. I want you to be aware that I know you have treated me infernally. Infernally, do you hear? And if you flatter yourself that I don't perceive it, you are a fool. And if you think I can be consoled by sweet words, you are an idiot. And if you fancy I'll suffer unrevenged, I'll convince you of the contrary in a very little while. Meantime, thank you for telling me your sister-in-law's secret. I swear I'll make the most of it and stand you aside.
Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë is one of the world's great novels brought to you each week by the National Broadcasting Company. We invite you to listen next week to the third episode of Wuthering Heights. And don't forget, there's a world of entertainment and information to be found in your local public library. To add to your enjoyment of this series, we recommend the Handbook of the World's Great Novels, which you may obtain by sending 25 cents to World's Great Novels, Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. That's Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27. Wuthering Heights is adapted for radio by Agnes Eckhart. The music was composed by Emil Soderstrom, and the orchestra was directed by Bernard Berquist. The entire production was under the direction of Homer Heck. Billy Fine and Boris Apollon are featured as the younger and elder Heathcliff, and Martha McCain as Catherine Earnshaw. Ellen Dean is played by Geraldine Kay, and Mr. Lockwood by Jonathan Hole. Isabella is played by Florine Sears. Edgar by John The world's great novels. The National Broadcasting Company brings you the third in a four-part version of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, another in our series of books that live the world's great novels.
Well, another week passed. Oddly enough, they go quickly on these bleak English moorlands. I'm not at all sorry I decided to spend a year here. And during the past week, Ellen Dean, my housekeeper here at Thrushcross Grange, has continued her history of my neighbors, of Wuthering Heights and its forbidding master, Heathcliff, of Cathy Earnshaw, who married Edgar Linton and moved from the Heights to the Grange, and of Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister, who became quite enamored of the fearsome Heathcliff when he returned to the moorland country. I'll let Mrs. Dean continue the history in her own words.
Well, as I was saying, Mr. Lockwood, for a time after Mr. Heathcliff's return, I thought he was willing to forget his hurt at Cathy's marrying Edgar Linton and be friends. But little by little, I saw the black demon coming out in him. And then there was that awful scene in the kitchen after Cathy saw Heathcliff kiss Isabella in the garden.
If you like Isabella, you shall marry her, Heathcliff. But do you like her? Tell her the truth, Heathcliff. There. You won't answer. I'm certain you don't.
Catherine, I want you to be aware that I know you have treated me infernally. Infernally, do you hear? And if you fancy I'll suffer unrevenged, I'll convince you of the contrary in a very little while. Meantime, thank you for telling me your sister-in-law takes a fancy to me. I swear I'll make the most of it and stand you aside.
How have I treated you infernally? How will you take your revenge?
I seek no revenge on you. That's not the plan. You are welcome to torture me death if it amuse you. Only allow me to amuse myself a little, and in the same style. And refrain from insult as much as you are able. Having leveled my palace, don't erect a hovel and complacently admire your own charity in giving me a home. Cathy, if I imagined you rarely wished me to marry Isabella, I'd cut my throat.
Edgar.
How is this, Catherine? What notion of propriety must you have to remain here after the language which has been held to you by that blackguard?
Have you been listening at the door, Edgar?
I have been so far forbearing with you, sir. Not that I was ignorant of your miserable, degraded character, but I felt you were only partly responsible for that. And Catherine, wishing to keep the friend of her childhood, I acquiesced, foolishly. Your presence is a moral poison that would contaminate the most virtuous. For that cause, and to prevent worse consequences, I shall deny you hereafter admission into this house, and give notice now that I require your instant departure.
Cathy, this lamb of yours threatens like a bull. It is in danger of splitting its skull against my knuckles. By heaven, Linton, I'm mortally sorry you're not worth knocking down.
Ellen, call the men.
No. Fair means, if you have not the courage to attack him, Edgar, make an apology, or allow yourself to be beaten. Edgar, I was defending you and yours, and I wish Heathcliff may flog you sick for daring to think an evil thought of me. Well, come on. Strike him, Edgar.
Cathy,
I wish you joy of the milk-blood coward, Cathy. And that is the slavering, shivering thing you preferred to me. Is he weeping, or is he going to faint for fear? Oh, let me out of here before I murder the fool.
Remain where you are, Catherine.
Oh, Edgar.
I wish neither to wrangle with you nor to be reconciled. But I want to know just one thing. Do you intend to continue your intimacy with him?
For mercy's sake. For mercy's sake, let us hear no more of it now. Your cold blood cannot be worked into a fever. Your veins are full of ice water, but mine are boiling.
To get rid of me, answer my question. Will you give up Heathcliff, or will you give up me? It's impossible for you to be my wife and his friend at the same time. And I absolutely require to know which you choose.
I require to be let alone. I demand it. Don't you see? I can't stand any more. Edgar, please leave me. Leave me. Leave me.
She then went into a senseless, wicked rage. I must admit I thought the whole thing feigned, and so did Mr. Linton. She went directly to her room and locked it, and for 3 days would see no one. On the 3rd day she unbarred her door and asked for more water. I also brought her some tea and toast, which she took eagerly. I still did not think her seriously ill, though she looked thin and wild.
What is that apathetic being doing? Has he fallen into a lethargy, or is he dead?
Neither, if you mean Mr. Linton. He is tolerably well, though continually among his studies, since he has no other companion.
Among his books? Oh, good heaven, does he not know how I'm altered? Is he actually so indifferent about my life?
Why, Mum, the master has no idea you're ill. And of course he does not fear you'll let yourself die of hunger.
If I were only sure it would kill him, I'd kill myself directly. Well, in those awful nights, I never closed my lids. I've been haunted, Ellen, tormented. I fear I'm losing my senses. And Edgar standing solemnly by to see it over. What in the name of all that feels has he to do with books when I am dying?
But he has no notion of such a thing. You told him you didn't want to see him.
Oh, I'm burning. I wish I were out of doors. Open the window, Ellen. I wish I were a girl again, of savage and hardy and free and laughing at injuries. Why am I so changed?
I'm sure I should be myself were I once among the heather on those hills. Oh, quick, Helen, why don't you open the window?
Because I won't give you your death of cold.
You would give me a chance of life, you mean? But I'm not helpless yet. I'll open it myself.
Now, Mrs. Linton, you must not...
I can see the heights from here.
It's only the moon, Miss Cathy. Wuthering Heights is 4 miles away.
No, I see it, I tell you. There's my room with a candle in it, and the other candle is Joseph's garret. Joseph sits up late, doesn't he? He's waiting for us. But we must pass Gimmerton Kirk yet. We've braved its ghost often together and dared each other to stand among the graves and ask them to come. Oh, no, but Heathcliff, if I dare you now, will you venture? If you do, I'll keep you. I'll not lie there by myself. They may bury me 12 feet deep and throw the church down over me, but I won't rest until you are with me. I never will. No,
Catherine, what are you raving about? Why are you out of bed?
Sir, my poor mistress is ill and she quite masters me. I cannot manage her at all. Pray come and persuade her to go to bed.
Catherine, why didn't you call for me? Shut the window, Ellen. Come, Catherine. Come back to bed, Catherine, dear.
Oh, you are come, are you, Edgar Linton? At last.
But you told me you didn't want to see me. I had no idea.
You are one of those things that are ever found when least wanted, and when you are wanted, never.
But, Catherine, you said...
Oh, yes. Yes, I suppose we shall have plenty of lamentations. But they can't keep me from my narrow home out yonder, my resting place where I'm bound before spring is here. No.
Catherine, what have you done? Am I nothing to you anymore? Do you love that wretched Heathcliff?
Stop! You mention that name, and I'll end the matter with a leap from that window. I don't want you, Edgar. I'm past wanting you. Return to your books. I'm glad you possess a consolation, for all that you had in me is gone. Oh.
But Mr. Edgar's love for Miss Cathy was such that he credited all she said to the brain fever from which the doctor later said she suffered. Mr. Linton was like a devoted slave, at her side day and night. With all the concern over her, it was only natural that we gave little notice to Miss Isabella during those days. But one morning at breakfast, one of the maids, a thoughtless girl who'd been on an early errand to Gimmerton, came panting into the chamber.
Oh, dear. What mun we have next? Master, our young
Hold your
lady.
noisy talk, girl.
Oh.
Speak lower, Mary. You might disturb Mrs. Linton. What ails Miss Isabella?
She's gone. Yon Heathcliff's run off with her.
Why, that's not true.
Oh, it's true, sir. I met on the road a lad that fetches milk here, and he asked whether we weren't in trouble at the Grange. I thought he meant for Mrs. Sickness, so I answered yes. Then, says he, there's somebody gone after him, I guess. He saw I knew nothing about it, so he told how a gentleman and lady had stopped to have a horseshoe fastened at a blacksmith shop, not long after midnight. He was there, and he got up to spy who they were, and he recognized them both directly. And just now I looked into her room, and she's gone for sure.
Oh, what should we do, sir? Are we to try any measures for overtaking them and bringing her back?
She went of her own accord. She had a right to go if she pleased. Hereafter, she is only my sister in name. Not because I disown her, but because she has disowned me.
For 2 months, we heard nothing from Heathcliff and Miss Isabella. And during that time, Cathy recovered from the worst shock of her brain fever. No mother ever nursed an only child more devotedly than Edgar tended her. I thought myself she might recover, so waited on she was. And there was double cause to desire it, for on her existence depended that of another. We hoped that in a little while Mr. Linton's heart would be gladdened by the birth of an heir. At the end of this 2-month period, I received a note from Miss Isabella. She and Heathcliff had settled at Wuthering Heights, and I must say I considered it an odd letter coming from the pen of a bride just off her honeymoon.
I want to ask you 2 questions, Ellen. The first is, How did you contrive to preserve any semblance of humanity when you lived at Wuthering Heights? I cannot find one bit of kindness in any of these people about me. And now for the second question. Is Heathcliff a man? If so, is he mad? And if not, is he a devil? I shan't tell you my reasons for making this inquiry, but I beseech you to come to see me soon, and bring a note from Edgar to me. Tell him I'd give the world to see his face again, that my heart returned to Thrushcross Grange 24 hours after I left it. You must come to see me, Ellen.
I told Mr. Linton about the letter, in part, and that she wanted a note from him, but he said he wanted no communication with Heathcliff's family. So I set out for Wuthering Heights empty-handed. I can't tell you my shock upon seeing Miss Isabella. Her pretty face was wan and listless, her hair uncurled, with locks hanging lankly down. Mr. Heathcliff sat at a table, turning over some papers. Isabella came forward eagerly to greet me and held out her hand for the expected letter. I shook my head, but she wouldn't understand.
Ellen, you must have...
If you have anything for Isabella, Ellen, give it to her. You needn't make a secret of it. We have no secrets between us.
Ellen?
Truthfully, I have nothing. Oh. My master sends his love, Mum, but he thinks that his household and the household here should not communicate with each other.
Oh, no. Edgar. Oh, Edgar.
I have forbidden you to mention his name in my house.
Your house, sir?
Why, yes, Ellen. Didn't you know? Hindley has become so in debt to me from gambling, he was forced to sign the house over to me. Stop that infernal sniveling. Ellen, how is your mistress's health?
Mrs. Linton is just now recovering, though she'll never be like she was. And if you have any regard for her, you'll shun crossing her way again.
Oh, no. Before you leave this house, I shall exact a promise that you'll get me an interview with her.
No, Heathcliff. You must not see her, Mr. Heathcliff. Have you no scruples in completely ruining her restoration by thrusting yourself into her remembrance now when she's nearly forgotten you?
You suppose she has nearly forgotten me? Oh, Ellen, you know she has not. If Edgar Linton loved with all the powers of his puny being, he couldn't love as much in 80 years as I could in a day. And Catherine has a heart as deep as I have. It is not in him to be loved like me. How can she love in him what he has not?
Catherine and Edgar are as fond of each other as any two people can be. I won't hear my brother talked about in that manner.
Yes, your brother is wondrous fond of you, too, isn't he? He turns you adrift on the world with surprising quickness.
He is not aware of what I suffer.
What you suffer?
My young lady is looking sadly the worse for her change of condition. Somebody's love comes short in her case, obviously. Whose I may guess, but perhaps I should not say.
I should guess it was her own. She degenerates into a mere little tramp. She is tired of trying to please me uncommonly early. Oh, yes. You'd hardly believe it, Ellen. But on the very morrow of our wedding, she was weeping to go home.
Well, sir, I hope you consider that Mrs. Heathcliff is accustomed to being looked after and waited on. And you cannot doubt her strong attachment, else she wouldn't have abandoned the elegances and comforts of her former home to fix herself in such a wilderness as this with you.
She abandoned them under a delusion, picturing in me a hero of romance. But at last I think she begins to know me. I don't perceive the silly smiles and grimaces that provoked me at first. But I don't care who knows. The passion was wholly on one side, and I never told her a lie about it. Now, was it not the depth of absurdity to dream that I could love her?
Stop!
Mr. Heathcliff, this is the talk of a madman.
Take care, Ellen. He's a fiend, a monster. You must promise not to mention a word of what he said to my brother or Catherine. Whatever he may pretend, he wishes to provoke Edgar to desperation. He says he only married me to obtain power over him, and he shan't obtain it. I'll die first. I hope, I pray that he may forget his diabolical prudence and kill me. The single pleasure I can imagine is to die or see him dead.
That will be enough from you for the present. Take a look at her, Ellen. She's not fit to be her own guardian. And I, being your legal protector, Isabella, must tell you what to do. Go Go upstairs.
No, don't touch
Then
me.
do as I say.
No.
Go upstairs.
No.
I have something to say to Ellen Dean in private.
No.
Go, I tell you. There. I have no pity, Ellen. I have no pity. The more the worms writhe, the more I yearn to crush them. Put down your bonnet, Ellen Dean. You're not going yet.
I have no more business here.
I have business with you. I told you I intend to see Catherine once more.
No.
Last night I was in the Grange garden 6 hours. I'll return tonight and every night until you find an opportunity to let me in. If you don't, I shall force my way in, and that would be bad for Catherine, Ellen.
She's all nerves. She couldn't bear the surprise.
I want you to tell her I'm coming. Let us settle it now. Will you help me? Or am I to fight my way to her over Linton and his footman?
Well, I argued and complained and flatly refused him 50 times. But in the long run, he forced me to an agreement. I carried a letter to my mistress from him, asking that he might see her. But it was Sunday morning before I found a chance to give it to her. The rest of the household were at church, and since it was such a nice day, we had left the doors open. Mrs. Linton sat in the recess of the window, staring vacantly. I put the letter in her hand. There's a letter for you, Mrs. Linton. You must read it immediately because it wants an answer. Shall I break the seal?
Yes.
Now, read it. Must I read it, Mum? It's from Mr. Heathcliff.
Heathcliff? Heathcliff?
He wishes to see you. He's in the garden by this time and impatient to know what the answer will be.
No. No, he's left the garden. He's come into the house, Ellen. I know. That's his footsteps, Ellen. It is. Heathcliff.
Kathy?
Oh.
He neither spoke nor loosed his hold for some 5 minutes, and I plainly saw that he could hardly bear to look into her face. The same conviction had stricken him as me from the instant he beheld her, that there was no prospect of ultimate recovery, that she was fated, sure to die.
Oh, Kathy. Oh, my life. How can I bear it?
What now? You and Edgar have broken my heart, Heathcliff. And you both come to bewail the deed to me as if you were the people to be pitied. I shall not pity you. Not I. You have killed me and thriven on it, I think. How strong you are. How many years do you mean to live after I'm gone?
Oh, Kathy.
I wish I could hold you until we were both dead. I shouldn't care what you suffered. I care nothing for your sufferings. Why shouldn't you suffer? I do. But will you forgive me? Will you say 20 years hence, that's the grave of Catherine Earnshaw. I loved her long ago and was wretched to lose her, but it is past. Will you say so, Heathcliff?
Don't torture me till I am as mad as yourself. Don't you know all those words will be branded on my memory and eating deeper eternally after you have left me? You know you lie to say I have killed you.
No.
And, Catherine, you know that I could as soon forget you as my existence. Is it not sufficient for your infernal selfishness that while you are at peace I shall writhe in torment?
I shall not be in peace. I'm not wishing you greater torment than I have, Heathcliff. I only wish us never to be parted. Come here and kneel down again. You never harmed me in your life. Won't you come here again? Do.
Oh, Kathy.
You see, Ellen, he would not relent a moment to keep me out of the grave. That is how I am loved. Oh, never mind. That is not my Heathcliff. I shall love mine and take him with me. He's my soul, and my soul wants to be free. I'm willing to escape into that other world and be there always. Helen, you think you are better and more fortunate than I, in full health and strength. You are sorry for me. But very soon that shall be altered. I shall be sorry for you. But it will seem strange that Heathcliff won't be near me.
Cathy. Now you teach me how cruel you've been. Cruel and false. Why did you despise me? Because I didn't have the money and position Linton had. Why did you betray your own heart? I have not one word of comfort. You deserve this. You have killed yourself. You love me. Then what right had you to choose someone else? Because misery and degradation and death, nothing could have parted us. Yet you of your own will did it. I have not broken your heart. You have broken it. And in breaking it, you have broken mine. So much the worse for me that I am strong. Do I want to live? Oh, would you like to live with your soul in the grave?
Let me alone. Let me alone. If I've done wrong, I'm dying for it. It is enough. You left me too, but I won't upbraid you. I'll forgive you. Forgive me.
It is hard to forgive and to look at those eyes and feel these wasted hands. Yes. Cathy, don't let me see your eyes. I forgive what you have done to me. I love my murderer. But yours, how can I?
Please, Mr. Heathcliff, they're returning from church. I can see them from the window. My master will be in the house soon.
Oh.
Heathcliff. No, Heathcliff.
He's entering the house. For heaven's sake, hurry down. Do be quick and stay among the trees till he's fairly in.
I must go, Cathy.
No.
But if I live, I'll see you again before you are asleep. I won't stray 5 yards from your window.
No, you must not go.
For 1 hour.
You shall not go.
I must.
No, not
Linton will be up immediately.
No, don't go. Don't go. It's the last time. Edgar will not hate us. Heathcliff, I shall die.
Hush, my darling. Hush, Catherine. I'll stay. If he shot me so, I'd expire with a blessing on my lips.
Will you ruin her because she's not wit to help herself? Get up. This is the most diabolical deed you ever did. Oh, we're done for. And she has fainted, or is a dead one.
Ellen, what is all... You treacherous villainess...
Look there. She's fainted. Unless you be a fiend, help her first. Then you shall speak to me.
Oh, Cathy.
In his anxiety for Cathy, Edgar forgot her hated friend. And about 12 o'clock that night, a 7-month child was born to Catherine, a little girl. 2 hours later, the mother died. Early that morning, I stole out of the house to the garden, for I knew that I would find Mr. Heathcliff waiting there, and I felt I should tell him. But there was no need.
She's dead. I've not waited for you to learn that. Put your handkerchief away. Don't snivel before me. She wants none of your tears.
She's dead. Gone to heaven, I hope.
Tell me. I want to know. How did she...
Quietly as a lamb. She drew a sigh and stretched herself like a child reviving and sinking again to sleep. 5 minutes after, I felt one little pulse at her heart, and nothing more.
And did she ever mention me?
Her senses never returned. She recognized nobody from the time you left her. She lies with a sweet smile on her face. Her life closed like a gentle dream. May she wake as kindly in the other world.
May she wake in torment.
Oh, no.
Why, she's a liar to the end. Where is she? Not in there. Not in heaven. Not perished. Where? Oh, Cathy, you said you cared nothing for my sufferings. And I pray one prayer. I repeat it till my tongue stiffens. Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. Be with me always. Take any form. Drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh, I cannot live without my life.
I cannot live without my soul.
Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë is one of the world's great novels brought to you each week by the National Broadcasting Company. We invite you to listen next week to the final episode of Wuthering Heights. And let us remind you, there's a world of entertainment and information to be found in your local public library. To add to your enjoyment of this series, we recommend the Handbook of the World's Great Novels, which you may obtain by sending 25 cents to World's Great Novels, Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. That's Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27. Wuthering Heights is adapted for radio by Agnes Eckhart. The music was composed by Emil Soderstrom, and the orchestra was directed by Bernard Berquist. The entire production was under the direction of Homer Heck. Boris Aplon is featured as Heathcliff and Martha McCain as Catherine. Ellen Dean is played by Geraldine Kay, Isabella by Florine Sears, Edgar Linton by John Cannon, Lockwood by Jonathan Cole, and The Servant by Doris Grundy. This is John Conrad. This program comes to you from Chicago and is a presentation of the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. Tuberculosis is a deadly disease, but it can be eliminated by prompt and effective action on the part of the individual and the community. You can protect yourself and prevent the spread of tuberculosis by having a chest X-ray today. Do your part to fight tuberculosis. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
The World's Great Novels. The National Broadcasting Company brings you the final episode in a four-part version of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, another in our series of books that live, The World's Great Novel.
Are you asleep, Mr. Lockwood?
No, Mrs. Dean. Merely enjoying the sight of the burning logs.
Aye, it is a cheery sight on a chill evening. I brought you a pot of steaming coffee.
Oh, thank you.
I thought you might enjoy it in case you plan to sit up late reading.
I shall read tonight only if you force me to, Mrs. Dean.
What, sir?
I can't recollect how many evenings now I've hoped that you'd find time from your various duties as my housekeeper to finish the strange tale that surrounds Wuthering Heights and this house here.
Does my rambling interest you as much as all that, sir?
Well, I can think of little else, Mrs. Dean. In truth, when I rented Thrushcross Grange from Mr. Heathcliff for this year, I had no idea these English moors would prove so bleak and idle. Perhaps that in part accounts for my interest in your story, though I think I should find it just as absorbing if I heard it in busy London.
Well, sir, I'm flattered, to say the least.
Then do take that rocker and continue.
Very well, sir.
You ended your narrative last time just after the death of Cathy Earnshaw Linton.
Yes. She died a few short hours after her little girl was born. Poor Mr. Linton was so distraught the baby had scant attention for a few weeks, but he was too good to be thoroughly unhappy long. Time brought him resignation and a melancholy sweetness, and he centered his whole life in little Catherine. He did not pray for Cathy's soul to haunt him as Heathcliff did.
Well, I've been wondering if perhaps after Cathy's death, Heathcliff might not have mellowed toward his wife, Isabella Linton, whom he married out of spite.
If only he had, sir. His treatment of poor Isabella grew worse and worse,
until one day she finally fled from him.
Oh, I see.
She stopped for an hour here at Thrushcross Grange and then went on to the south of London to live, where a son was born to her some months later.
And did Heathcliff not try to follow her?
Oh, he was glad to be rid of the sight of her, I think. And his plan of revenge took a longer view than the daily tormenting of Isabella.
Oh? What plan was that, Mrs. Dean?
You shall understand, sir, as I continue. The next 12 years were the happiest of my life. They were spent peacefully and quietly here at Thrushcross Grange, caring for my darling little Cathy. The only disturbing event of that period was the death of Mr. Hindley Earnshaw.
Oh.
Though he'd fallen low through drink and gambling, Hindley and I had practically grown up together in the old days at Wuthering Heights, and so I felt compelled to go and assist at the last duties.
What are you doing here, Ellen Dean? We want no visitors from Thrushcross Grange.
I've come to see if I may be of any service with Mr. Hindley, Mr. Heathcliff.
He's beyond all help. He died like he lived, in a drunken stupor.
But he deserves a decent and Christian burial, sir.
Well, if you insist, then take care of the matter. But I bid you remember that the money for the whole affair will come out of my pocket.
Out of your pocket, sir?
Surely you're not surprised, Ellen. Hindley died completely in debt. His entire property is mortgaged to me. I am now the sole master of Wuthering Heights, Ellen.
But what is to become of his son, little Hareton, the rightful heir?
He is not the rightful heir, and he is mine. Mine. Funny, eh, Ellen? That the son of the man who tried to keep me a groveling slave is now dependent on me.
But certainly Hareton Earnshaw's not to blame. What do you propose to do with him?
Do? I'll tell you what I plan to do, Ellen. I shall rear him as pleases my fancy, and we'll see if one tree won't grow as crooked as another, with the same wind to twist it. Yes, we'll see.
Well, sir, as the years went on, I scarcely ever saw Wuthering Heights, though 'twas but 4 miles away. For 'twas one place Edgar Linton had given strict instructions that his daughter Cathy should never visit.
Yes.
Those dozen years were happy enough, and then Mr. Linton got word from his sister Isabella that she was dying, and she begged him to come to London and bring her son Linton back to Thrushcross Grange. This Edgar Linton did, but he had only had the child in the house a few hours when Mr. Heathcliff sent a servant to the Grange.
I'm instructed to see Mr. Linton.
A very unlikely hour to be troubling people. What business brings you here tonight?
It's Master Linton I must speak to.
Mr. Linton is going to bed. Unless you have something particular to say, I'm sure he won't hear it now.
I must see him now. Which is his room?
See here. Well, if you insist, I shall announce you.
That's better.
Yes?
A servant is here from Wuthering Heights, sir, who insists upon seeing you.
Heathcliff has sent me for his lad, and I mustn't go back without him.
If there were any way I could avoid this, I would,
There must
but...
be some way, sir. The boy is not well at best, and to send him to that place.
But it would be a useless battle, Ellen. Tell Mr. Heathcliff that his son shall come to Wuthering Heights tomorrow.
But I have...
He is in bed and too tired to go the distance now. Ellen will bring him tomorrow morning.
So the next day I took the boy over the moors to Wuthering Heights. It was early, and Hareton and Heathcliff had just finished breakfast.
Hello, Ellen. I feared I should have to come down and fetch my property myself. You've brought it, have you? Well, let us see what we can make of it.
Don't be afraid, Linton.
What a beauty. What a lovely, charming thing. Oh, curse my soul, but it's worse than I expected. And the devil knows I was not sanguine.
Sit down, Linton, dear. You're all a tremble.
So he is. Tut, tut, none of that nonsense. You're your mother's child entirely. Where is my share in the puling chicken?
I hope you'll be kind to the boy, Mr. Heathcliff, or you'll not keep him long.
I'll be very kind to him, you needn't fear. Only nobody else must be kind to him. Hareton, you infernal calf, be going to your work.
I'm going.
Yes, Ellen. My son is prospective owner of Thrushcross Grange, and I should not want him to die until I was certain of being his successor.
I don't
quite understand.
Old Linton's will provided that if Edgar had no male heirs and Isabella did, Thrushcross Grange would go to Isabella's child. And her child is mine. I want the triumph of seeing my descendant fairly lord of their estates. That is the sole consideration which can make me endure the whelp. I despise him for himself, and hate him for the memories he revives.
We at the Grange then lost all contact with young Linton as we had with the others at Wuthering Heights, and life settled back to its old pleasant way until Miss Cathy's 16th birthday. This 20th of March was a beautiful spring day, and Cathy was given permission to have a ramble on the edge of the moor with me in search of a colony of moor game. Her young legs kept so far ahead of me she'd run almost to Wuthering Heights before I could catch up with her. And when I did, I beheld a couple of persons arrest her, one of whom was Mr. Heathcliff. The other turned out to be Hareton Earnshaw, now quite grown.
I've neither taken nor found any of your game, and I didn't mean to take them. But Papa told me there were quantities around, and I wished to see the eggs.
And who is Papa?
Mr. Linton of Thrushcross Grange. I thought you did not know me, or you wouldn't have spoken in that way.
You suppose Papa is highly esteemed and respected, then?
And what are you?
Miss Cathy, we really must go back.
Is that man your son?
Hareton? No, he is not my son. But I have one, and you've seen him before. And though your nurse is in a hurry, I think both you and she would be better for a little rest. Will you just turn this nab of heath and walk into my house?
You really mustn't on any account, Miss Cathy.
Why? I'm tired of running and the ground is dewy. I can't sit here. Oh, let us go, Ellen.
Come, Ellen, hold your tongue. It will be a treat for her to look in on us. Hareton.
Aye.
Get forward with the lass. You shall walk with me, Ellen.
Come along, miss.
Of course, I'm so glad.
Mr. Heathcliff, it's very wrong. You know you mean no good. And there she'll see Linton, and all will be told as soon as we return, and I shall have the blame.
I want her to see Linton. He's looking better these few days. It's not often he's fit to be seen. He's such a weakling. But where's the harm in it?
I'm convinced you have bad design in encouraging her to enter your house.
My design is as honest as possible. I'll inform you of its whole scope. That the two cousins may fall in love and get married. I'm acting generously to your master, Ellen. His young chit has no expectations, and should she second my wishes, she'll be provided for at once as joint successor with Linton.
If Linton died, and his life is quite uncertain, Catherine would be the heir.
No, she would not. There is no clause in the will to secure it so. His property would go to me, but to prevent disputes, I desire their union and am resolved to bring it about.
With great reluctance, I accompanied them to Wuthering Heights, where Heathcliff summoned poor Linton, then turned to Cathy.
Now, who is that? Can you tell?
Your son?
Yes. But is this the only time you have beheld him? Think now. You have a short memory. Linton, don't you recall your cousin that you used to tease us so with wishing to see?
What? Linton? Why, he's taller than I am. Are you Linton?
Yes.
Naughty Ellen, to try to hinder me from entering. But I'll take this walk every morning in the future. Won't you be glad to see me, Linton?
Linton, speak up. What? He shall be happier than you know to have you, and quite crestfallen if you break your promise.
Naturally, Mr. Linton, Cathy's father, had to know of our visit, and though he was greatly troubled, he did not scold Cathy. He explained, as simply as possible, the way Heathcliff had treated Isabella, and then forbade Cathy ever to visit the Heights again. A week after that, he contracted a severe cold, which settled in his lungs and kept him abed most of the time. Catherine spent her days by his side, and my evenings were so busy with household affairs, I was not able to inquire how she spent that time. But one evening I searched the house and could find no trace of her. The servants affirmed they had not seen her. I returned to her apartment, extinguished my candle, and waited. Well, miss.
Ellen?
Yes, where have you been riding at this hour? I saw you come in.
To the bottom of the park.
Oh, Catherine, You know you've been doing wrong, or you wouldn't be driven to tell me an untruth. That does grieve me.
But Ellen, I was so afraid of your being angry.
Well, I shan't be angry if you tell me the exact truth.
Well, I've been to Wuthering Heights, and I've never missed a day since Papa fell ill.
I thought as much.
I couldn't break my promise to Linton. It was not that I went to amuse myself, for I was often wretched the whole evening.
And why was that?
Because Linton gets cross with me so often. But I excuse him because he often feels ill. Once his father heard him speaking crossly to me, and he abused him terribly for doing it. So I told Linton he must whisper his bitter things to me.
Oh, that you should hear bitter words from anyone.
But, Ellen, I feel sorry for Linton. And when he's in a good mood, we do have a pleasant time together. Oh, now, Ellen, you've heard all. But you won't tell Papa, will you?
I'll make up my mind on that point tomorrow. It requires some thought. I thought it over aloud in my master's study, walking straight to his room from hers, relating the whole story. And the visits were stopped for good. But all winter and spring, suspiciously mature letters came from Linton to his Uncle Edgar, begging that he at least be allowed to meet Catherine on the moors for a visit. Meanwhile, Mr. Linton's health failed rapidly, and it was apparent that he had not much longer to live. Summer was already past its prime when he finally agreed that Cathy and Linton might meet on the moors. It was a close, sultry day when we reached the appointed spot where Linton lay on the heath looking very pale and miserable. Why, Master Linton, how ill you do look.
Oh, Linton, you do look ill. Are you worse than usual?
No. Better.
Oh, but you have been worse, I know. You're so much thinner than when last I saw you.
I'm tired is all. And in the morning I often feel sick. Papa says I grow so fast. Oh, please sit down. It's wearing to see anyone standing.
Linton, I don't think you wanted to see me at all. My father's very ill. Why did you call me from his bedside?
No, do not go. Oh, I cannot bear it. Catherine, I'm a traitor. No, I cannot tell you. But if you leave me, I shall be killed. Catherine, dear, my life is in your hands. You have said you loved me, and if you did, it wouldn't harm you, and perhaps you will consent and he'll let me die with you.
Consent to what?
No, I dare not tell. My father threatened me, and I dread him.
Oh, well, keep your secret if you're a coward.
Be quiet, dear sweet Catherine. Here comes my father.
Well, Ellie, here's something to see you so near to my house. How are you at the Grange? The rumor goes that Edgar Linton is on his deathbed. How long do you think he will last?
I don't know.
Get up, Linton. Get up. Don't grovel on the ground there. Up this minute.
I will, Father. Only let me alone or I shall faint.
You would imagine I was a devil himself to excite such horror. Be so kind as to walk home with him, will you, lass? He shudders if I touch him.
My father has forbidden me to enter Wuthering Heights again.
Come now, my house is not stricken with the plague. You shall have tea before you go home. Come now.
My first instinct told me not to enter, and yet Linton was so miserable we were both moved to pity for him. But once inside, Heathcliff locked and bolted the door, and we soon realized we were prisoners. When he left the room, we rushed over to Linton. Master Linton, you know what your diabolical father is after, and you must tell us.
Yes, Linton, you must.
Papa wants us to be married. And he knows your papa wouldn't let us marry now, and he's afraid of my dying if we wait. So we are to be married in the morning, and you are to stay here all night.
Why, the man is mad or thinks us fools, every one. Do you imagine...
Be quiet, please be quiet.
What, Linton? Sniveling again? You're pining for pure love, are you not?
Mr. Heathcliff, don't you see? If I stay here tonight, Papa will be miserable. He shall think me lost. Oh, let me go home. I promised to marry Linton. I do love him.
Miss Linton, I shall enjoy myself remarkably in thinking your father will be miserable. You could have hit on no surer way of fixing your residence under my roof for the next 24 hours. As to your promise to marry Linton, I shall take care you shall keep it, for you shall not quit this place till it is fulfilled.
For a week we were kept prisoners at Wuthering Heights, and during that time Heathcliff had Cathy and Linton married. I was allowed to return before Catherine, But fortunately, she persuaded Linton to help her escape in time to be by her father's bedside when he died. The evening after the funeral, we were seated in the library when Heathcliff walked in, without even the ceremony of knocking. He was master now, and availed himself of the master's privilege. When Catherine saw him, she rose with an impulse to dash out.
Stop! No more runnings away. I've come to fetch you home, and I hope you'll be a dutiful daughter and not encourage my son to further disobedience. I was embarrassed how to punish him when I found he had helped you escape. He is such a cobweb. A pinch would have annihilated him. But you'll see by his look that he received his due.
Why not let Catherine continue here and send Master Linton to her? As you hate them both, you'd not miss them.
I'm seeking a tenant for the Grange, and I want my children about me, to be sure. Besides, the lass owes me her services for her bread. I'm not going to nurture her in luxury and idleness. Make haste and get ready now.
I shall. Linton is all I have to love in the world. And though you've done what you could to make him hateful to me and me to him, you cannot make us hate each other.
You are a boastful champion, but it is not I who will make him hateful to you, but his own sweet spirit. He is as bitter at gall at your desertion and its consequences. I heard him draw a pleasant picture to Zillah of what he would do if he were as strong as I. The inclination is there, and his very weakness will sharpen his wits to find a substitute for strength.
With those words, he took her away, and I've not seen her since. Linton died a short month later. Heaven only knows what she has had to endure in that place. Your report of her when you visited Wuthering Heights shortly after your arrival here, Mr. Lockwood, was the first news I've had of my lady. I can well imagine from your description the alterations in her personality.
That was the end of Mrs. Dean's narrative, at least for that time. You see, it's some 6 months now since that evening in front of the fire at Thrushcross Grange. A week later, I went back to London on business, and I don't mind saying I'd had my fill of the bleak moorlands. But when my year's lease of Thrushcross Grange came to a close, I went back to settle accounts with Mr. Heathcliff and tell him I had no desire to occupy it further. An amazing change seems to have occurred at the Heights. Flowers were blooming around it in bright little patches, and there was about the whole place what seemed, though I could scarcely believe it, a happy air. I was even more surprised to find my old friend Ellen Dean in the kitchen.
Mr. Lockwood, you should have given us notice you were coming.
Well, I only want to finish my business with your master, Mrs. Dean.
What business, sir?
About the rent.
Oh, then you must settle with the lady of the house. Or rather, me. She has not learned to manage her affairs yet.
Well,
Oh, you look surprised. You've not heard of Heathcliff's death?
Heathcliff dead? How long ago?
3 months since. But sit down and I'll tell you all about it.
Gladly. I've wondered many times about this strange house and its occupants. Go ahead, Mrs. Dean. Go ahead.
I was summoned to Wuthering Heights within a fortnight of your leaving us, and I obeyed joyfully for Catherine's sake. Mr. Heathcliff, who seemed strangely altered, did not explain his reason for sending for me except to say that I should keep Catherine out of his sight. This meant a great part of the time she stayed in the kitchen with me. And, of course, Hareton Earnshaw spent a great deal of time by the fire there, too. And usually, Cathy laughed at his ignorance and taunted him cruelly. But gradually a change came over her attitude. She was lonely, needed companionship, and she began to make small overtures of friendship, but Hareton only growled or cursed at her. Finally, one day, as we three sat before the kitchen fire...
I know why Hareton never speaks when I'm in the kitchen. He's afraid I'll laugh at him. Ellen, what do you think? He began to teach himself to read once, and because I laughed, he burned the books.
Go away and let me be.
Hareton, if I gave you a book, would you take it now?
I want none of your books.
Oh, Hareton, please, I found out that I should like you to be my friend now. Oh, Hareton, do you hear?
Get off, will ye?
No, you must listen to
Will
me.
you go to the devil and let me be? I'll have naught to do with ye and your mucky pride.
You should be friends with your cousin, Mr. Hareton, since she repents of her sauciness. That would do you a great deal of good. It would make you another man to have her for a companion.
A companion? Ha! She hates me and does not think me fit to wipe her shoon.
It is not I who hate you, it's you who hate me. You hate me as much as Mr. Heathcliff does.
You're an infernal liar. Why have I made him angry by taking your part time and again? And that when you sneered at and despised me.
I didn't know you took my part. And I was so miserable and bitter at everyone. But now I thank you and beg you to forgive me. What else can I do? Well, perhaps this kiss will convince you. There.
Well, miss, I must say that's a little bold.
What else could I do, Ellen? He wouldn't shake hands and he wouldn't look. I had to show him some way I like him. Oh, say you'll forgive me, Hareton, do.
Oh, but, Cathy,
And you'll be my friend?
You'll be ashamed of me every day of your life.
I shall not, for I shall teach you to read as good as I. Oh, come now, let us begin with this book here.
The intimacy thus commenced grew rapidly. I was afraid it would greatly anger Mr. Heathcliff, but as I said, he was acting so strangely, going off for days at a time and eating scarcely once in 24 hours, that he took little notice of their attachment. And when he finally did, he simply stared into the fire and said,
"It is a poor conclusion, is it not, Ellen? An absurd termination to my violent exertions. I get levers and mattocks to demolish the two houses, and when everything is ready and in my power, I find not the will to lift a slate off either roof. Where is the use? It sounds as if I had become suddenly charitable. Well, it is far from being the case. I have merely lost the faculty of enjoying their destruction. Ellen, I want to call Mr. Green here and make my will."
Mr. Heathcliff, there's plenty of time for that. You're a young man and healthy.
No, change is working daily. I feel it coming nearer and nearer.
Then you have no fear of death?
Fear? It is my fondest hope. At last my body would be able to join my soul, which was buried with Catherine Earnshaw 18 years ago.
Heathcliff took to wandering about the moors constantly. He hardly ever spoke to us, though he always had a look of happiness on his face. One night he returned wet to the skin from a driving rain, and when I went to call him the next morning, his eyes met mine so keen and fierce I started, and he seemed to smile. But when I put my hand to his forehead, I found he was stark and dead. Some folk about say he and Cathy still walk the moors together, but you'd say idle talk, and so say I.
Hareton, come in now. You must have another lesson.
Only if I get a kiss before I start, and one for every time I mispronounce a word.
Oh, that's the surest way I know of having you learn nothing.
Those two seem quite happy.
Aye, they are, sir. And my happiest moment shall be at their wedding, which will take place on New Year's Day. Will you not speak to them?
No, Mrs. Dean. No. From the look on Hareton's face, he should never forgive me if I was so crude as to interrupt his bliss.
Oh, Mr. Lockwood.
But I should like for you to deliver to them my heartiest wishes. My walk home was lengthened by a diversion in the direction of the kirk. I sought and soon discovered the 3 headstones in the slope next the moor. The middle one, Cathy Earnshaw Lintons, was grey and half buried in the heath. Edgar Lintons only harmonized by the turf and moss creeping up its foot. Heathcliff's still bare. I lingered round them under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth.
Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë is one of the world's great novels, brought to you each week by the National Broadcasting Company. Next week, World's Great Novels will not be heard, but on February 6th, we invite you to hear the first episode in a 3-part version of Kenilworth, that exciting novel of intrigue in Queen Elizabeth's court by Sir Walter Scott. To add to your enjoyment of this series, we recommend the Handbook of the World's Great Novels, which you may obtain by sending 25 cents to World's Great Novels, Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. That's Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27. Wuthering Heights was adapted for radio by Agnes Eckhart. The music was composed by Emil Soderstrom, and the entire production was under the direction of Homer Heck. Boris Aplon was featured as Heathcliff, and Geraldine Kay as Ellen Dean. Catherine Linton was played by Jean Maury, Hareton Earnshaw by Charles Mountain, Linton Heathcliff by Charles Flynn, Lockwood by Jonathan Hole, Edgar Linton by John Cannon, and The Servant by Marvin Peisner. This is Hugh Downs. This program comes to you from Chicago and is a presentation of the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.